Hi, this is Michael Leahy of the Irish Freedom Party, and I want to talk to you today about the incipient crisis in radio television sharing. I can't help believing that this crisis has been something of a false flag operation, and perhaps it has been deliberately manipulated. I think we're seeing the great and the good of RTE now coming out and beating their breasts and ologoning and apologising. And it seems fairly clear to me that they're going to throw some of their leading administrators and their leading stars under a bus, apologise to us all, and then go back and behave exactly as as they have been behaving for the past 20 or 30 years. Um, it's not really a crisis of corruption in financial management, even though, of course, that's an extremely serious matter for a semi-state body which uses taxpayers' funds. It's not really a crisis of a bullying Director General who completely ignores her board. All those things are quite common in the uniquely Irish structures of a semi-state system. What's far more important to me is the fact that radio television sharing for the past, well, certainly for as long as I can remember, has effectively functioned as a propaganda arm of powerful interests, whether they're government or private, to the point where it is frequently difficult to distinguish its output from downright lies. I think every one of us is aware of this. This is a small enough country. We have significant evidence. We all have recollections of having viewed output on RTE about some particular topic with which we're fully familiar. And I think everybody is shocked at the extent of inaccuracy and the lack of objectivity which they portray. A classic example of this recently is the video which did around some perhaps 6 or 8 months ago of a white kid being beaten up by black kids and being racially taunted during the process. Now, it's not so much the particular event, but the fact that RTE utterly refused to cover it and tried to condemn those who did show it. Because we know perfectly well that if the situation had been reversed and it was a black kid being beaten up by white kids with racial threats, this would have been replayed on a continuous loop on RTE day after day after day, and probably for years to come, to try to persuade the Irish people that they're an inherently racist people. We all know this. This is, without a doubt, everybody knows that that's exactly how they would have acted. So we must also see the hate speech laws, which of course RTE strongly supports, as another means of attacking the people who oppose RTE's agenda of unleashing racial tension in our society and sexual chaos in our society. Those are very much part of the revolutionary playbook. RTE, like so many revolutionaries, wants to tear down society without having the remotest idea of what they're going to put in its place. It is necessary for us to remove the current leadership of RTE. The left have always understood that in order to control the society, it is first of all necessary to control the means of communications. The enfeebled right, which is always concerned with protection of free speech, has been traditionally very reluctant to intervene in matters of journalism, because they see that as potentially an attack against free speech. But while this is going on, of course, the whole journalistic profession has been captured by the left. The Irish Freedom Party absolutely believes in a free press, and we will do everything to ensure the right of individual citizens to continue to freely express their opinions. However, the time has gone beyond being able to trust to individuals who control organisations like RTE to control freedom of access to the airwaves. RTE are political activists. They're controlled by politicians, and they're a highly political and politicised organisation. They care nothing for freedom of speech. They will prate about freedom of speech while at the same time supporting the appalling anti-free speech laws about to be implemented by this government, which will attack the rights of anybody who disagrees with the government's highly leftist agenda. Now, what is one to do about this? It's very easy to say we just simply close down radio television sharing, but that's not going to do a great deal of good, because we do need some kind of a news service, and we need some kind of an entertainment service. Firstly, I would think we need to separate the two functions of radio television sharing: to provide light entertainment, which is they provide some kind of a useful function, that even though they try to implement their racial profiling and their ugly anti-Irish narrative in every one of their light entertainment dramas, for example. But at least if there's a separation between news on the one hand, news broadcasting on the one hand, and light entertainment, it may be possible to more carefully concentrate on ensuring an objectivity in the production of news. I think the time has gone beyond the position whereby we can rely on individuals to be objective. There's simply that's just nonsense. There's no such thing as objectivity in an Irish journalist. They use that phrase as a means of deliberately being unobjective. In Ireland, unfortunately, words often mean the direct opposite of what they're supposed to mean. So I think they have to be answerable to an independent body or a series of bodies in their news output. The rules that govern elections do impose a certain level of fairness by law on broadcasting and RTE, and I think perhaps it's time we introduce that into all news coverage. For example, I think it should be specifically outlawed, the general practice of radio television sharing of packing panels and packing audiences to try to make one side of an argument look bad or to try to make one side of an argument look extreme. That's a standard RTE tactic that they've been using for years. Even the method of lighting that they use in people that they disapprove of, they deliberately cast them in a shadow and make them look sinister. These are standard tactics that they've been using for a long, long time. And these must be identified and they must be prohibited by law. Also, I think it is time that where RTE do not report on very important matters, where they try to cover up matters which are clearly of national interest, such as, for example, the death rates. I have submitted all kinds of statistics to the media of this country about the death rates, even in County Clare and Ireland nationally, and they have been completely ignored. Now, it's not just RTE that needs to be brought to account for this. Where there is what is clearly a matter of public interest, there is an obligation on our news outlets, whether RTE or the newspapers, to report those matters. And if they're not doing it, then they're not doing their job properly. Now, those are two examples of what we could do to try to improve objectivity. They're not going to be easy to implement, but it is hugely important that we recognize the role that biased broadcasting can play in manipulating and undermining the stability of a society. That is what RTE wants to do. I believe it's what many parts of our government, for example, the Green Party and even the so-called centrist parties now, they seem to be committed to a tearing down of the structures of our society, the tearing down of family structures, even the corruption of the rule of law. And if you want to see the corruption of the rule of law, read the hate speech legislation. It is introducing uncertainty and willfulness and perversity and lack of equality before the law into our legal code. That's what our parties want. We in the Irish Freedom Party believe in a society which is based on freedom of expression, on justice before the law and on equality before the law. And we will do everything we can to ensure that the organs of our state reflect that, and the organs of our state must now be taken to include those who control our communications and who control our mass media. This has been Michael Leahy of the Irish Freedom Party. Thank you very much for listening.